Hello, my name is Jana and I'm an admissions rep with Kansas State University Online. I want to start by thanking everyone for joining us tonight to learn more about our Personal Financial Planning PhD program. I'm joined by Dr. Stuart Heckman and Morgan Graham. They're going to spend roughly the next 30 minutes giving us a presentation about this program, and then we'll spend the last 10 to 15 minutes answering questions. Throughout the duration of this presentation, we will be monitoring the chat feature and answering questions as they are being asked. Some of your questions may be saved until the end to answer. If you could now please take a few seconds to locate the chat feature and answer the question that you see on your screen, as we would love to learn a little bit more about you. I will give you a minute to do so now. As those chats are coming in, I also wanted to let you know that we will be sharing a recording of this presentation following the webinar. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Heckman and Morgan.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks for your interest in the PhD program and personal financial planning here at K-State. Thanks for responding there in the chat. Appreciate that. So today we're just going to spend a little bit of time giving you an introduction to the program, talk about content, why somebody might be interested in getting a PhD in our program, and talk about admissions, curriculum, and things like that. And so I'm happy to have Morgan Graham with me as well. Morgan's our academic advisor and will help especially with basically all the admissions process, the logistics of that process, and also the as you're in the program, planning out your courses and working through progress towards your degree. So a little bit about the program. I think a lot of, unless you're new to financial planning, a question we get a lot is, why is the personal financial planning program not in the College of Business? Well, there's some really interesting reasons, I think, historically around why that's the case, but we're really proud of the fact that we are in College of Health and Human Sciences. And the program is really designed to help you as a professional help build the knowledge base in personal financial planning, lead programs, contribute to our understanding of how people interact with money. The program itself is 90 credit hours, and if you happen to be bringing in a master's degree that is related, like an MBA or some other kind of master's, or if you have the CFP credential, you are able to transfer in up to 30 credit hours. The program is typically completed in 3.5 to 5 years. And I'd say the most variable portion of that is related to the dissertation writing. In terms of the number of students that we admit, each year we aim to admit about 6 to 8 students. And depending on the pool that year, that can vary in terms of exactly how competitive that admissions process is. And I think it's very important for us to note that the courses, even though this is happening at a distance, spring and fall courses, your typical academic term, those are typically live courses. We work very closely with the cohort to make sure we have a good time identified. It tends to be over lunch hour or towards the end of the business day. And then we also have our summer sessions, which are really the highlight, I think, of the PhD program, this kind of hybrid experience where you actually spend 2 weeks on campus to start your program and then come back for your first 3 summers. And then the last summer, we have our international trip that happens. And in case you're interested, we have been to China, South Korea, the Netherlands and Belgium, and right before COVID, we were planning on going to Italy. And so hopefully we'll get the Italy trip going again another time. And I think so that's kind of a high level view of the program. I really want to emphasize just a couple things. The PhD is really a research degree. And sometimes I think we get some confusion around this. What do we mean when we say research? We're really talking about building a body of knowledge. So we're producing new knowledge. The PhD is really designed to help you think at a different level and give you the tools needed to advance our understanding of this content area. It also happens to be a requirement if you are interested in teaching in higher education. And I'll say a requirement with maybe a slight qualification on that. You are able to teach undergraduate courses with a master's degree, but if you're going to teach graduate courses, PhD is definitely required. And very often, many universities are looking for folks with a terminal degree, the highest degree in that field. And so while that is true, our degree is really focused on teaching you how to produce research. And many faculty members, if you go into the academic world, many faculty members will also teach as they are producing research and as they're expanding that body of knowledge. So they often go hand in hand, but the PhD is primarily a research degree. And so we really like to emphasize that for people. If you're from the financial planning realm and you're thinking, I'd really love to have advanced tax planning courses or really advanced investment courses, we actually, besides the CFP curriculum, we really don't spend a lot of time on more advanced techniques and planning tools in those particular domains. We'll give you tools to further those domains from a research perspective, but it's not primarily advanced planning techniques, for instance. In terms of the topics that our program is really focused on, we are really, I'd say really broadly interested in just how people, humans, families, how humans behave with money or things related to money. Resources more generally would be an okay way to say that as well. And I'll just mention that if you happen to be interested in something like asset pricing or stock returns, we typically are not a great program for that. You really want to be more of a traditional finance program. We really feel like we add value on the human side of things. So I actually do have a current project where I'm interested in how young people make equity allocation decisions in their retirement plans. And to the extent that that lines up with kind of normative or expected behavior. So I am interested in kind of the investment domain, but I'm very curious about how individuals make choices. And that's really the overlap that we really specialize in, how people interact with decisions around money, managing resources. In terms of our method, sometimes we get questions around if I'm being trained for research, what kinds of methods am I going to learn how to use? Our program is primarily geared towards quantitative methods, and that just stands in contrast to qualitative methods. We do have one faculty member that has done some qualitative work, and we'll lean on her if we are interested in have made a mixed methods project or producing some kind of qualitative project. Qualitative methods are not really built into the program, but we will do lots of quantitative methods. And if you're really curious, we have worked with a few students on developing some of those skills, but it's extra. It's outside of maybe our regular scope. And so I wanted to mention that. And if you're like, I'm not entirely sure what that means, that's okay. I just want to put that out there in case people have big questions about that, or you're already down the road exploring what kind of methods you might be curious about in terms of developing your skills from a research perspective. And I think I just want to summarize this, this idea of research and how do you know if this program is a good fit for you by recommending that you take a look on our website. You should be able to see, and our website just went through some updates, and we have had a lot of, we have some new faces around our program, so we're still getting some of that updated. But most of our faculty should have their curriculum vitas, their CVs listed, and you can see the papers that are published. We have a really productive group of faculty publishing 4 to 5 articles a year, which is a pretty high number. And our graduate students, our PhD students, are actually on many of those projects. We publish a lot with our PhD students. It's very common for our students to graduate with 2 to 4, and we've even had some graduate with up to like 8 or 9 publications. And so our program really we really pride ourselves on the ability to teach students, take them from zero, teach them how to do research, get them producing research, and even at a high quality enough to publish in leading journals in our field. So that's what I wanted to say about just kind of a research overview, program overview. And I know we have a number of chats coming through here. I haven't been able to keep track of what types of questions. I think it might be, Morgan, what do you think? We can come back to questions as we, or should we take a break here and maybe address the ones that are related to the research content?
Yeah, if you want to, let's come back to some of them. A few of these are going to get answered through the course of the remaining part of the discussion. But we'll definitely make sure that we address what's in the chat and we'll get your questions answered. So, yeah. All right, awesome. So thank you for that, Dr. Heckman. So as he mentioned, I'm the academic advisor for both the master's and the PhD program. And so I will be here to support you if you're applying. And then if you're admitted, we'll be working together and, we'll be meeting each semester and I'll be advising you throughout the course of the program, in addition to eventually your committee who would support you with through the PhD. So what I want to talk to you about now is the application and admission requirements. So what do you need to have and what do you need to do to apply and get into the program? So starting with GPA, undergraduate GPA of 3.0 or higher. Now, if you're thinking, okay, undergrad was not my strong suit, but then I got a master's and I did really well. I graduated with a great GPA. Can that be considered over my undergrad? There are ways that we can look at kind of the full scope of your academic background. So if you are looking at that and that already feels like a barrier, don't let it be. There are more factors that go into that, and we'll work with you in the grad school with that. You'll submit transcripts from any institutions you attended prior to K-State. So just make sure that you know how to go find those to add to your application. We do require a GRE or a GMAT score dated within 5 years of your application. That's probably one of the, if not the most asked question. Do I have to do the GRE or do I have to do the GMAT? Can it be waived? I've got this graduate degree or I've got this experience. Unfortunately, it cannot be waived. It's really just kind of plain and simple. It is a requirement that we have for all applicants that they do submit a GRE or a GMAT score. We do not have a minimum specified score. So, go ahead with the exam, submit your scores. We don't have a minimum specified score, but we do require that submission. Just, indicating for our applicants that they are able to, perform at the graduate level. A 2-page personal statement and a 2-page research statement. I don't want to spend too much time on those items because we have instructions posted on our website. So if you go to our website, you're looking at the admission page, there's a couple of hyperlinks there that you can pull down a PDF and it'll walk you through what should that statement include, what information do you want to make sure you touch on, how to format it, things like that. 3 letters of recommendation. So former faculty, colleague, or other professionals. So sometimes we do get asked that of, who would be a good reference for me? So again, thinking along those lines of someone who can speak to your ability to, perform at that level of rigor, that level, that graduate, doctoral, academic level. So someone that can speak to that, whether you work with them now, you've worked with them in the past, a past instructor, whoever that may be. A copy of your resume or CV will be included with your application. So those are the materials that are included, but then there are also other factors that we're looking for when admitting students to the program. And so a big part of that is a commitment to participate in the 10-day summer residency on campus. So Dr. Heckman mentioned that. We'll look at a sample graduation plan here in just a moment, so I'll speak to that a little bit more. But students are required to participate in that in person on campus in the summer, which for us is in August, the first 2 weeks of August. Also the commitment to participate in the international trip. And so in the past, it's taken place in June. We may see the dates of that, deviate a little bit, but you're going to have a few years notice before you get there in your 4th summer. But typically that trip's going to be about 10 days, give or take a day or two with travel, depending on where you're flying from, but participating in that global trip in the 4th summer. And then also a commitment to attend professional and academic association meetings. So really important that our students are, involved in industry events and industry organizations, but also presenting at them and participating in those, whether that's a poster, if you've published a paper, something like that. And so participating in those. We've got, a good handful of students going to the academic research colloquium in DC. with the CFP board, presenting at that, different events where, students are participating and getting their work out there. And then one thing also that I will highlight here is the application deadline. So I'll talk here in a second about the timeline for when classes start, but we mentioned the summer a few times. I mentioned just now that's in August. So each cohort starts in the summer session, first 2 weeks of August. And the application deadline for each cohort is going to be the December 1st prior. So if you're looking at your timeline and you're thinking, okay, I really want to start in 2023, I really want to start in 2024, then make sure that you have enough time for December 1st ahead of that to get your application materials in. Okay, so looking here now at a sample graduation plan, I know there are several folks on the call that I've already gotten to speak to, so you've seen this before. But what we're looking at here is really a rundown of all the courses that you may see across the course of the PhD program. Now, I'm actually going to start on the bottom half of this page where you see the supporting core and the elective courses. So for students who are coming in, like Dr. Heckman was mentioning, the transfer credits that are available. So if you've got a master's and your CFP certification, there's an opportunity for what we call a block transfer of up to 30 credit hours. And there are also, other opportunities if you have like a master's in financial planning, different things, but you could transfer up to 30 credits into the program. So you may come in already having your core content and your elective courses covered. However, if you are coming into the program and you're saying, I don't have a CFP, but I want to get my CFP certification, you can take those core courses that you see over there on the left, and those will qualify you to sit for the CFP exam. If you've got a specific interest in financial therapy, that is a very unique part of our graduate program. You could still take the financial therapy electives. But otherwise, if you are coming in without that master's degree or without the CFP certification, then you would be taking the core and the elective courses for 30 hours. So jumping back up to the top then from there, so you'll see I've got this labeled, for each year starting in the summer, going into fall and spring for the first few years. So starting in summer on campus, you're here for about 2 weeks. For instance, this year was August 1st through the 11th. And then going into your fall and spring semesters. So what you see up there at the top, those are going to be the courses that are fixed in terms of the timing that you would take them. And then in addition to that, you'll see about midway through the additional required research and professional courses. So those are courses that students are going to take multiple times throughout the course of the program. And it's going to be more fluid in terms of timing and really up to the student when you'll take those. So we have some research seminars. You'll do that twice. It's a 1 credit class. PFP 808 research applications, or you'll hear us call that research cluster within the program. That one is a 3 credit class and students will take that 3 times. And so the research clusters are really cool because students are coming in and actively participating in research. So whether that's coming alongside your instructor and participating in a project that they've got going on, or an instructor saying to the class, all right, what do we want to work on? And the instructor is supporting that. And so ultimately, students are coming away from their research cluster publishing. So really, like Dr. Heckman was saying, graduating from the program already, publishing anywhere from 3 to 9 times if you're really, really going for it. And then research hours, just briefly touching on those, you'll get 18 of those credits, typically starting after your preliminary examination. Just to briefly touch on prelims, don't want to spend too much time there, but just to kind of let you know ahead of time that it is coming if you start the program. So preliminary examination, that's in your 3rd spring. It's a 2-part written and oral exam, and passing that exam is really what enters you into candidacy for the PhD, for the degree. So prelims, and then going into dissertation proposal, and then dissertation defense. And so that's where, we were looking at that timeline before of 3.5 to 5 years. So after prelims, you kind of seal your own destiny at that point, just kind of depending on how your own research is going and how much time and you're committing to that work to get your dissertation wrapped up and go into your defense and passing that. One other thing that I'll mention, just a little note that I've got over here on the left side, is that if a student hasn't taken a grad level statistics course in the recent past, then you may be required to take Stat 703. Or if you have taken stats, but you just want a refresher, you want to kind of rebuild that foundation, that's an option that you have coming in just to kind of get more comfortable with stats before you move forward with some of the additional classes. So what I want to talk about now is just why K-State. There are some different options out there for a PhD, but what's going to make K-State a little different for you as you're looking into your options. So we have a very committed faculty, and part of that is because we keep our cohorts intentionally a small size so that your faculty can be committed to you, so your faculty can support you as you're going through this program. Our faculty are also just leading in their field. They're leading in research, they're leading in practice. We have Dr. Megan McCoy, who is just absolutely leading, in the field of financial therapy. She was just recently appointed editor of one of the journals, CFP board.
The Financial Planning Review,
there we go.
Which is CFP board's newish journal. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And our faculty are really committed to working directly with you as a student and working closely with you and supporting you through this, and including you also in the work that they're doing. If you ever look at our LinkedIn, we try to share different announcements of our students who are publishing their work, and trying to recognize them on there, so you can also see as well who's involved in that and who's getting credited in those publications. You also get student and cohort support. So again, you're admitted in a cohort of 6 to 8 students, and you are walking through this program year by year together. So, and yes, you're doing it from a distance, but especially because you've got those in-person summer sessions every year where you're really connecting with each other for a set amount of time. You're together every day, but you're building that community support, that peer support that is really needed for something like this. And you've got that support within the network while you're in your cohort, but also even just beyond that. The K-State Alumni Network for the PhD program is really interconnected and really supportive, and constantly working together. And so you get a lot of really good peer support and peer connections that way. A very unique part of our PhD, which I'm sure many of you have recognized by this point, is that it is mostly online, majority online, with the exception of the summer session. So, it is designed for students who are working full time. Our faculty recognize that our students are teaching, that they are, practitioners, or maybe they're both. Maybe you're already doing research, whatever it may be. But it is designed for students who are working full time. In fact, as I kind of think through our current batch of students that we've got going through right now, I'm actually not aware of any who are full-time PhD students. Every single one that I'm aware of, and I see Dr. Heckman shaking his head as well. He works obviously so closely with them. They're all working full-time, and it is designed to be done that way. And then just 2 other, just things I'll just mention briefly is that it does meet the educational requirements set for the CFP exam. So if you're looking into teaching and you want to be able to have, the PhD in addition to your CFP certification, if you don't have that already, this will qualify you for the exam. And then we're also an educational partner with AFCPE. So if you're interested in designations there as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Heckman.
Yeah, let's take a quick pause here, because there's a lot of great questions that I think will that are just helpful to address on the fly here. So let me try to gather a couple of these up. So I think we've addressed the CFP board registration question in terms of, this qualifies you, this satisfies the curriculum requirements that you may sit for the exam. You still have to take the exam, satisfy the experience requirements in order to get the CFP. And there is no admission preference between GRE or GMAT. And in terms of people often ask, what's the typical accepted student, kind of what's their profile? I wouldn't be able to tell you they're like a typical GRE GMAT score offhand. I can tell you that most everybody comes in with a master's degree. Many of them have some kind of business type background, and the vast majority of our students have a good amount of experience in the profession or in a profession, not necessarily financial planning. One of our really bright students that we've had, I believe he's in dissertation writing phase right now. He was actually a high school math teacher and loved personal finance, and was really excited to get into this program and kind of do a little bit of a career change. And so we get people like that are changing careers, coming from other disciplines. That does happen at times. We've had a handful of high school teachers actually, now that I'm thinking about that. And so in terms of average profile, we do get a ton of people that have a good amount of financial planning experience, which I think really adds a lovely dynamic to our PhD program, because the faculty are providing, some of us do have practitioner experience as well, but we're generally providing the tools to help you think clearly about research questions, designing research studies, and answering those questions, where our students are bringing great insight about how people operate because they've been working with people. So we do get quite a good mix in terms of background. We usually do not have, I can't really think of any, and this is my 9th year. We typically do not have people coming straight out of undergraduate. And that's not because we've said that or we have a strong preference for that or anything, but usually the people are coming to us after they do have some experience, whether or not that's financial planning related. So I hope that helps. In terms of age, average age, we're all over the place on age. We have younger folks in 20s, like maybe mid to late 20s, and we have folks that are, I know people that have gone through the program in their 60s or beyond. And so all over the place in terms of age. Let's see what else we got here. Lots of great questions. Okay, yeah, timeline question in terms of the PhD work. There are a few questions around this. I think it's helpful to think, and Maureen, actually, if you want to back up to our the course sheet, and if anyone would like a sample of this, just send Morgan an email and she can provide this to you. It's a great tool for us. And I would generally think of these in kind of 2 buckets. You have your research core classes, and then you have your supporting courses. That would be the CFP curriculum. You have your electives, and then you also have our seminar series and research clusters. I put those in this other category with the supporting and elective because you have freedom over the timing of those courses. Your research core classes, though, your summer session class, and then research method 1 and the coding, the statistical methods courses, research methods 2, theory, these core research classes, there really is no flexibility in how you progress through those. You enter with your cohort and you take this one class. There's one designated research course, summer, fall, and spring, and you take that with your cohort. At times, if we have somebody that has some interruption, so a baby comes along or life happens or whatever else might come along, if somebody has to delay their progress in a research course, they're typically just falling back to the next cohort and they pick up with the next cohort, because it is very difficult. You really cannot progress to the next research class until you've completed the prior one. And so hopefully that makes sense. So the research classes, there's really not flexibility in the timing. You do that with your cohort. And related to that, the students with their cohort become very close. You spend lots of time with your cohort. And I think it's easily one of the best features of the program, this cohort structure. And I know students that have gone through the program and they're lifelong friends with people they progress through these courses with. They help each other. They do research together. They do research after they graduate together. It's just awesome. And so timing wise though, so you don't have flexibility on the research courses. The variability in timing is, yes, sometimes people make slower progress because they get delayed. Most of the time, it's not really my perspective. It's not usually due to professional constraints. It's usually due to there's major life events that happen and that slows some people down in terms of their progress, or it's in the dissertation phase. There can just be a lot of variability there. Maybe work demands can sometimes slow up dissertation progress, but the reality is it's just very difficult. Once you're at that stage, it's really 100% on you. You're doing independent research at that point, and your ability to kind of set aside really big chunks of time in your schedule really makes or breaks how quickly you can progress through a dissertation. It's just not the kind of thing you can work on 30 minutes at a time, deal with other interruptions. You need to kind of set out big chunks of time. Some students will take a week off of their professional responsibilities just to focus on writing. So hopefully that helps, but usually the variability in timing I'd say life events, and then dissertation progress would be the other one. Go ahead, Maureen.
Sorry, one question I'll go ahead and answer was about if you can do, if you can earn an MBA, I guess, kind of in conjunction with the PhD. So currently we don't have like a specific path or partnership, that is MBA plus PhD. If you really wanted to, I don't even know if this is recommended, but if you wanted to pursue like the MBA at K-State while doing the PhD, it would just be that. It would be doing two separate ones. So all that to say, we don't currently have a partnership or an arrangement for MBA plus PhD through the same pathway.
Yep, that's great. Oh, there was a question about assistantships I wanted to address. We have had a very small number of assistantships in the past. Usually people are drawn to the program because they have a professional career that they would really rather not step away from. In my 9 years, I think we've had one student come to campus full-time. And if you are interested in coming to campus full-time, you can let us know that in the application process, because we do at times have limited funds available for teaching assistantships. We have an undergraduate program, and that student that I had in mind, he was a full-time, he was a PhD student in the same structure. So he was just down the hall, but he would hop on Zoom with the rest of his cohort, participate in the class the same way that the distance students would. And so that there was no disruption in terms of that progress. He wasn't able to do it really any faster. Same progress as our online students. But then rather than working as a planner, which is what he was doing before, he taught a couple classes for us. I guess one class, probably a term, couple different classes while he was here, or he would do research assistantship, teaching assistantship, grading and things like that. So we do have some flexibility, but that's really available if people are able to come here to campus to help relieve some of the teaching load that our on-campus faculty have. So that is a possibility. You just need to kind of let us know, and it's kind of subject to availability of funding.
I see a couple of questions from a little bit ago that I scrolled up to that I'll go ahead and address. Does the PhD curriculum qualify students to sit for the CFT level 1 exam? So for the financial therapist certification. So yes, with an asterisk, because there's going to be some changes going on there through FTA. So, but we are definitely partnered with FTA. So for their educational requirements. So if you wanted to talk about that more, if you're looking on the graduation plan we've got up right now under the elective courses, those first 4, the intro down to financial therapy theory and research, those are our financial therapy classes. And Dr. Megan McCoy, who we've mentioned a few times, if you ever want to chat with her about that connection of our classes with FTA, the Financial Therapy Association, and the CFT one, she could talk to you about that. I also see another question on here about 2 different instructions on the website for the personal statement. One is 2 pages, one is 10. Are those 2 different papers? It's the 2-page. So we're still work in progress there on some updates, but it is the 2-page statement. And so you'll follow those instructions that are closer to the top of that page on our website. So 2-page personal statement.
Yep, that's great. Okay, and then 2 other questions that I haven't talked about yet. Average time per week. This is a great question. It's a difficult one to answer, but I'll give you a ballpark. In terms of your research course that's required, I think students should expect to spend 15 to 20 hours probably on that 3 credit hour course in the fall and spring. Summer session is kind of a different category. You're kind of locked in those 2 weeks doing almost nothing, but we have a few social events and things like that, but you're really locked in that whole time doing your work and getting your 3 credit hour class done. If you're also doing CFP board classes, or CFP curriculum or electives on top of that, you can expect a little bit more. So it's definitely not a light schedule in terms of the time needed to really devote to the coursework. I'll qualify that with, it depends on a couple things. It may be more or less than that kind of ballpark 15, 20 hours based on how quickly you can read academic articles, and that's a skill that you acquire, and you get better at reading academic articles as you go, but that might take more time up front because they are long, they are very technical, and it is just a different style of reading. And so it can take longer if you just take longer to process written material. You'll probably need to spend a little more time. There's also a lot of writing, and so if people write at very different speeds, so if you're kind of a slower writer, you might need a little bit more time. If you write very quickly, it may take you less time. But the PhD program is very intensive on reading and writing, just by the nature of the work. And okay, a question about the quantitative methods and programming languages. Yes, in terms of, okay, quantitative methods, if you're familiar with econometrics, that's a great starting point. Regression-based techniques, so just ordinary least squares regression is definitely, that's kind of our starting point. And then our classes really build on from there with categorical regression models, binary and multinomial, ordinal logits and probits, if you've heard of these terms. Our second stats class is more of a survey, and we get into some more interesting methods that are starting to be used in our field more, instrumental variables and matching techniques, selection models, panel data models. So fixed effects and random effects types models. A little bit of differencing. So those are kind of, I'd say that's like a really high level of the toolkit, and we don't expect you to have really any knowledge of that coming in. So if that doesn't ring a bell, that's okay. But if you're familiar and curious, econometrics would be, we rely a lot on econometrics textbooks. In terms of programming language, we're using Stata now. We made a transition to Stata just in the last year or two. We were using SAS previously. Some students also learn R, or they're familiar with R, and so they use that alongside, but our courses are all taught in Stata, and we've been really happy with that package. Typical data sources, we teach you how to use a couple of really big ones that are nationally representative and publicly available. So the Survey of Consumer Finances from the Federal Reserve Board, Health and Retirement Survey, National Longitudinal Study of Youth, sometimes panel study income dynamics. So these are large government funded data sets that have a lot of household finance information in them, and we use those really extensively and teach a lot of our techniques using those data sets. There are also chances for people to collect their own data. I have a PhD student right now who is going to be collecting his own data, and we have a number of students that go the primary data collection route. So we'll equip you to be able to do that if your research question really calls for that. All right. Okay, I'm going to talk about placements coming up. So the question about business schools, I'll come back to that in a moment. Research clusters. You're not necessarily limited to 3 clusters. That's what will count in terms of your degree, but there would definitely be opportunity if you wanted to enroll in another cluster, and that has happened from time to time for sure. Yeah, and there's no problem with that. Oh yeah, Morgan, you already answered that, sorry. Okay, what if we pause there? And okay, yeah, master and econ, that's great. So yeah, you're familiar with those methods. That's perfect. Okay, and then the last question there, and then we'll move on to our kind of placements and what people are doing after they get our PhD. Directly from undergrad with a CFP designation, I don't think I've seen that personally. I think the youngest folks we've had have been maybe a couple years out of undergrad, but whether they had the CFP or not, I cannot recall. We do get lots of people that come into the program with a CFP, but that varies. Some cohorts, it's most everybody, and some cohorts maybe only 1 or 2. So that will vary a lot. All right, I think that,
One other thing that I'll just quickly
yeah, go
jump in
ahead,
with real quick while we're
please.
on this slide. As you're kind of looking into, your admission options and, looking at your timing for starting the PhD, I know I talked to a lot of prospective students who obviously need time to get their application ready, do GRE, GMAT, or maybe even just kind of get life where it needs to be before you can fully jump in, both feet into the PhD and get started. So maybe that's a little bit down the road. But some students, what they find they want to do is to kind of get a jump start on it. And if you want to do that, if you need the classes, one thing you can do is go through the master's first and get the core and the elective courses knocked out. So what you see on the bottom part here, those 6 classes for the core, and then the elective courses on the right-hand side. So combining 10 of those classes, 30 credit hours, that's the master's degree right there. And so that's one way too that students can go ahead and kind of get started on it. Then you would essentially transfer those master's credits in towards the PhD. And also an opportunity for you to, if you need those core classes for like the CFP exam, CFP certification, you can go ahead and be doing that. Go ahead and be getting some of your classes out of the way for the PhD. And then also getting a taste for K-State, getting a taste for the online learning environment and things like that. So there are several students who have found that to be a helpful option and in terms of getting things going before the actual formal PhD application process. So just want to throw that out there as an option as well.
Yeah, that's great. And so on this slide, we have a handful of just job titles that our current/past students have. What's interesting about our students, as I mentioned, many of them are very successful in their chosen career path. And so what we find is that sometimes students come to us already at a pretty high level within some kind of financial firm, financial planning group, an owner maybe of a practice, or maybe they're affiliated with a university already in some kind of role, maybe a teaching or an admin role, and they're really interested in making a transition to a tenure track or just a role that has more research responsibility. And so you can see a handful of the titles here, which I think are really interesting, gives you a sense of like, there's a variety of things that people are doing. And then the next slide actually has, and I might spend a little bit of time kind of addressing some of these specifically, but you can get a sense of some of the places that our students are landing. And I'll just qualify with what I had just said that, some of these, for instance, like SoFi and what was the other one I had in mind? Oh, in Texas A&M, for instance, Biola would actually be another example. Our students came in kind of these other roles or pretty high up roles, but then needing the research training to either make a transition to another type of role within that institution, or they're looking to kind of make a jump. And so these aren't necessarily just placements straight out of our program, since some of them had some kind of affiliation with the group prior. So I hope that makes sense. But just to give you a sense, like SoFi, Guidestone, Nerd's Eye View, Michael Kitsis, if you're familiar with him, Janice Henderson, Vanguard, these are all graduates or current students, sorry if I cut out there for a second, that are in research roles or are directing education efforts or overseeing high-level financial planning strategy within firms. The student I have in mind at Vanguard, this was a current student in an advisor role, and then as he got into the PhD program, he's pretty far along now. He's in kind of the last stages of the program. He was able to transition from the advisor role to more of their advice, data analytics, and their research kind of heavy teams. And so we have a number of people that do that kind of in the private world. Then we have a number of folks that get our PhD and are able to land traditional tenure track jobs or professor practice positions where there's some combination of teaching and research at major research institutions. So Texas Tech actually has 3 of our grads. I feel like I should have made that one larger because 3 of our grads are on faculty at Texas Tech. One's actually like a associate dean and out of the provost office now. One is the director, or the school director of the financial planning program, and then one is a newer assistant professor on the tenure track in a tenure track role. We actually hired one of our own grads, Derek Lawson, got his PhD from us, went and taught at Texas Tech for a year and came back. And yeah, there's a whole variety of different kinds of programs. I'll point out Columbia because this is really, it's in their School of Professional Studies. We've had a handful of students kind of running that program, teaching extensively in that program. And so that is actually just more of a teaching focused position, but that has been really productive. I want to point out Southern Maine and Fort Hays also, because these are actually in finance programs. So these are students that got PhDs from us and got jobs in finance business schools. There was a question around this. And this is a longer and a little bit more complicated conversation because of business school accreditation. What we find is our graduates certainly qualify. We meet the requirements from an accreditation standpoint, our PhD, and a lot of times folks will have the CFP credential as well. And so we can qualify in several different categories with AASCB accreditation. However, practically speaking, some finance departments will just require, even though the accreditation doesn't require it, will require a PhD from a business program. So I would say if you are really interested in being in a business program, just be in touch with us and we can kind of help you navigate. It really does depend on the exact business program you're thinking about, but we do have graduates that have gotten jobs, tenure track, traditional roles, in addition to just like instructor type positions at business schools. We've had students be competitive there, no problem, and we're able to publish in business journals, no problem. So those are all things that you want to be thinking about, but helpful, I think, to keep in mind. I also like to point out that the new head of research at the CFP board is one of our graduates as well. So I feel like K-State PhD grads are taking over the world, which I think is awesome. So I see some other questions coming through. I think that's all I wanted to mention there about kind of our placements, but really high, really good, excellent placements in our field, I would say.
Awesome. So a couple of the questions that have come in, I'll definitely address while I'm going through just kind of general FAQs now. So obviously one of the big questions students are going to have is going to be around cost. So the current tuition and fees is $635.10 per credit hour. So most courses are going to be 3 credit hours. So coming in around $900 for a class under the current cost. And so when you look at the full, if you're looking at like 60 credits, if you get to transfer in some credits, I think that comes to around like 39,000, somewhere around there. Obviously, tuition and fees could shift year over year, but that's the current cost that students are looking at. That does not include travel and lodging costs for summer session coming to Manhattan, Kansas, to K-State's campus for the first 3 summers, and it does not include international trip costs. So just you'll want to be kind of factoring those in as well. Those are going to vary quite a bit. For students when they're coming in for summer session, we've seen students stay in the dorm here on K-State's campus. We've seen students do hotels, Airbnbs, and some different options. So it really just kind of varies. We have students drive, we have students fly. Excuse me. So that'll vary quite a bit. In terms of, that also does not include books. So books are going to be separate from your tuition costs. Funding the programs, that's a big question, looking at costs, how are students paying for it? So typically what our current students are doing in terms of paying for the program is, if you have any tuition reimbursement available through your employer, that's one option. If you find any external funding or grants, we have a student who participated in FINRA, had a grant available for doctoral students. They participated in that. So any external funding and grants that you can find, you're more than welcome to. Currently, there aren't any available through our department. So looking at tuition reimbursement options through your employer, looking at external scholarships and grants, and then obviously external loans as they're available. I also know students who have talked about or are doing, adjunct teaching on the side. They find that kind of covers the cost. And so that's an option if you want to go ahead and look into some teaching opportunities as some additional funding that may be an option for you as well.
And I'll also add, occasionally faculty might have grants that will, so these wouldn't be competitive, but if we apply for a competitive grant, we get the grant, then we might be able to hire a research assistant, and that would be from our PhD student pool. We'd say, I need somebody for 5 or 10 hours a week. And usually there's tuition, hopefully some tuition funding in there as well. So that's not always available, but occasionally that's available as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then in terms of timing on the application, I know that's a question that we got. So with the deadline being December 1, there's not any review done prior to that deadline. So not necessarily any advantage to applying ahead of that December 1 deadline. And so the committee will review applications following the holidays. And so students will be notified of an invitation for an interview, by maybe late January, early February. So interviews conducted in February, and then admission decisions probably by end of February or early March. So that's kind of the tentative timeline that you can expect if you submit an application, for this year or in future years. I think those are the main questions. So online application, so you can go online at online.kstate.edu, click on how to apply. And then if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, pfp@ksu.edu. That'll get you to me, or you can just email Morgan Graham at ksu.edu. And I'm happy to help. If you want to set up, one-on-one conversation, I know everyone has their own circumstances and, their own goals. I'm happy to meet with you one-on-one, especially about the logistics of, again, applying, getting in, registering for classes, looking at a graduation plan, looking at your potential transfer opportunities. That's really where I'm going to come in. If you want to talk more about research interests, professional opportunities, content, things like that, anything statistics, what's Dr. Heckman's favorite causality? If you want to talk about anything like that, we can set up a meeting with Dr. Heckman, but reach out and we'll get you set up with our calendars. And then obviously the online team, they can help you as well. Their email is right there for you. And that pretty much wraps up what we have got for you. I know we've got a couple more questions coming in through the chat. We're close to our time. So if there are any final questions that anybody has, feel free to drop those in now. And we'll take a look and try to answer before we head out. Okay, so good question about the master's program. So the master's is 100% online. So when we were looking at those classes there at the bottom, the supporting core and the elective, those are 100% online, 30 credits. Those classes are 8 weeks long each. So students will typically do 2 in a semester, 1 for the first 8 weeks and 1 for the second 8 weeks. And I will make that distinction. So those classes are 8 weeks long. Everything else in the PhD is 16 weeks, but 100% online for the master's program. You don't have to be in person for that.
And I saw that there was a question about like percent admission, like what's the admission rate basically. Mm-hmm. It varies a ton. I don't know the exact numbers offhand, but I'll tell you in the time that I've been here, we might vary between 10 and 20 qualified, or maybe a little more applicants, and we're trying to pull 6 to 8 out of that group. It can vary really by year to year, and it's hard to know exactly what causes that, but some years are extremely competitive where, it's like, oh, well, we'd love to offer the top 12, but we've got 8 slots max. And so we have had students apply in multiple years, and that is sometimes how that works out. But some years extremely competitive, other years, our admission rate might be closer to 50 or 60%. So it's kind of hard to know ahead of time what that year is going to look like.
I just put the link for my Calendly into the chat. So if that's really the best way to schedule a meeting with me, but email me and I'll send it to you either way. But you can go through Calendly, and that way you can pick a time that works best for you if a follow-up conversation would be helpful. And Dr.
Oh yeah,
Heckman
great
has
question
advocated
about
as well.
yeah, finishing. There's not many that don't finish. I'll say it that way. The thing that happens the most is dissertation writing might get delayed a bit. I'd say in the last, so if we're typically meeting 6 to 8 each year, in the last 6 to 8 years, I can think of offhand 2 students that out of that whole time period that we encouraged them to move towards the master's degree. And so they were moving on the PhD program. And we've gotten very good about signaling to students, letting students know if we have concerns about their ability to finish the PhD, for whether it's the amount of time they're able to dedicate to the program or deficiencies that, you know, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like this is going to work out for you. We have gotten much better about letting people know early, and those students will often just finish with our master's degree. But I can think of 2 in the last 8 years or so, 6 to 8 years that has been the case. We have maybe a student every once in a blue moon that runs up. There's a 10-year writing, you have a 10-year window to finish your dissertation, I think after passing prelims. I think that's right, isn't that Morgan? It's something like that. And I think I can think of 1 or 2 students in that whole time period that have run into that deadline or have gotten close to that deadline for us to bring it up, like, hey, we're getting close to this deadline. So I hope that helps. I'm sorry I don't have like the exact numbers on that, but first, we really try to support students in their progress and helping them complete. So I'm thinking like a handful of cases in the last 8 years where students have not been able to finish.
Any final questions? We're coming up right on our time, so we want to give you back the rest of your evening. But if there are any last questions, feel free to put it into the chat. But otherwise, reach out to us. Happy to speak with you further. And just so glad that all of you were able to join us tonight. So thank you.
Agreed. Thanks a lot. Let us know if you have any other questions.
I want to thank Dr. Heckman and Morgan for that wonderful presentation. And I want to thank everyone for joining us here tonight. If you are ready to apply, please visit our website at online.ksu.edu and select how to apply for detailed instructions. As a reminder, everyone who has registered for this webinar will be receiving a recording via email as soon as it's available. Finally, if you have any additional questions that we didn't cover tonight, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again, and I hope you all have a great night.